Good morning.
Matt Green.
Yes.
There we go.
Oh, Matt, we should introduce ourselves.
So let's let our panel introduce themselves one at a time. And I'm Matt Green, by the way. I'm a filmmaker in Atlanta. And I was actually here, I think, year one, and then I've come back 3 or 4 times in between because I'm always usually busy when this goes on. This year he didn't have it in October, so I could make it.
Great.
Being an effects guy, October is always really busy for me. So anyway,
Clayton Landy, I guess we're a Star Trek panel, so
Yeah.
Deep Space Nine episode,
Yes.
Kushida.
Good. Pat Cronin, Star Trek TNG. Urko, the most boring man in the universe. That's exciting.
Stephen Manley, Star Trek 3, The Ponfar Spock with Robin Curtis.
he makes it sound so small a part, doesn't he?
That was the best story of the other day, so I'd like to get back to that one.
I'm going to tell you a really fast story about how Stephen and I met. We've known each other for 2 years. And I'm on my phone with a friend of ours put us together because we both have a love of Escape from New York. And as we're talking, he says, yeah, I've been in a few movies. So I look him up. And I'm going through and we're talking. And he's talking to me and I go, shut up. He goes, what? I said, stop talking. Were you Spock in Star Trek 3? He's like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, yeah. Anyway, I went on from there. So, anyway.
Matt is the best cheerleader for me, you know.
If he's with me, I'm telling people who he is. But anyway, so, oh, there we go. So we have one more edition.
There we go, new edition.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Morning.
The man who needs no introduction.
Yeah.
And one of the best snowblow makers you'll ever see. I think.
Yes.
I thought it was a great thing I saw online about that.
No, thank you.
Anyway, so, ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Howard. So we just introduced ourselves, and everybody knows which episode he was in, I'm sure.
Wait, I think you misspoke.
Did I?
Episodes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you were. I always think of you as a little kid in this film.
Yes, well, I was in the first, the original Star Trek show, and then of course, I played Commander Baylock, and then I was in Deep Space Nine. I played a character named Grady, and then in Enterprise, I played a character named Muck, and then in Discovery, I played a character named the Creepy Orion.
We're heading in the direction here.
They keep giving you these names.
Yeah. I always hate that when you're the custodian. It's one big advantage I have with my brother is he's hired me a number of times, and he's always given me a name. Come on, give me a name, bud. I need a name. And then in Strange New Worlds, I played a character named Buck Martinez. So there it is.
Wonderful.
I'd say that's a lineage of Star Trek right there.
Yes, that's it.
So I was thrown into moderating this at the last second because the other guy couldn't be here apparently. I have not prepared anything, but we'll wing it. So I guess let's see. I don't have any good questions here.
Open it up to
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, who's got her? Yeah, let's do it.
There's a guy from Knoxville. He knows what to say.
This is for Clint. After you did the original Star Trek series, you obviously when you were a little kid. When did it dawn on you that you were in such a social phenomenon as the original Star Trek? How old was it when you go, oh wow, I was in that?
I was probably in my 50s. No, well, you know what? Wait, let me back up a minute. And I don't want to, I can get long-winded because I've got my mom's gift of gab. But I honest to God didn't give it any thought for a long, long time. And then an interesting thing happened. Out of the blue, and I probably was in my 40s, Cheryl, my brother's wife, who I love dearly, and I've known since I was 11 years old, because Ron and Cheryl got together when they were 16. That she was a huge fan of the Star Trek franchise. And when I heard it for the first time, I literally did a double take. I went, it was a goofy science fiction show. With kind of, you know, I mean, you could say, yeah, people liked it, but there was no, in my mind, there was no gravity to it. And she just was the exact opposite. And Cheryl is all about her energy, and she bubbles, and she's a, you know, wonderful person. But she loved it. But it wasn't really until I went to probably my first or second Star Trek convention. And I'll give you one little capsule. I was at a Star Trek convention, the one in Vegas, the big one. And I'm signing autographs, and everything is going great, and it's good commerce for me, and the people are friendly. And a fellow comes up to me, and he's a fan, a huge fan, and he hands me his business card. And he's a program director, Dr. Albert Simeon, a program director at NASA. Now, I've been around NASA people because of my experiences with Apollo 13. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, this guy's a friggin' rocket scientist. He's the brightest of the bright. And he's standing there like a fanboy. Yeah. And I had now just everything fell into place, a profound respect for what the Star Trek people invented and what has been nurtured. So anyway, there it is, long-winded.
So on that same note, let's go down the rest of the line and kind of ask the same question. Maybe not directly because he was so young when it happened, but going into Star Trek, what was your feeling? Or was it just another job, or how important was it to you, and when did it really become that?
For me, it was a little bit of both.
Talk to them.
I mean, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm having a nice conversation. I'm getting this to see a guy who, growing up, Star Trek. I was a fan. I've seen every episode. I don't know how many times of the original, because in my mind, Gene Reynolds put this Western in outer space, gave me a framework to understand the society I thought was worth aspiring to. But as a kid, it was like, that was the height of science fiction. And then it led me into that. And so, yes, I saw you then. And I was a fan. Now, then I got the opportunity to do it. A director who directed my episode, I had done a pilot, I did a pilot for Used Cars with Victor Lobel. And he brought me in, and I had a great time. And not the immensity, the impact of it hit me when my son and his best friend, who were then in elementary school, Wonderland School up in Warren, came and got to be on the set. And all of a sudden I was a hero at an elementary school. Because of Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. And that's when that hit me. As I said the other day, the funny thing for me was I had to then come back and ADR Luke redo every line of dialogue I had in the episode, because they said there is no Bronx in outer space. No, but you've never seen this race of alien
I don't know,
before.
there's a guy named
How
Brady.
do you know he doesn't sound like that? And so, yes, so it was a job for me. It was a mortgage payment. Thank you. I got a gig on a show I really dig, and then all of a sudden I'm a hero at an elementary school. It was pretty cool.
That's one of the things the fans, people who aren't in the industry, and I'm lucky enough to be in the industry, is that they don't realize that most of what we do, originally when we do it, is just, hey, I got a gig.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do. And then later things, the only one that's ever happened for me, not this is about me, but I worked with Coppola last year and on his last movie, and that was the thing that during it the whole time you're doing, no, this isn't just a gig. But normally those don't happen. Anyway, Pat.
Yeah, well, I did the one episode on TNG as the most boring man in the universe, and that was great fun. I had teenage boys, and at the time I did it, it was the last season of TNG, and I believe I told this the other day, but hell, it was great fun. Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes were doing Romeo and Juliet between scenes. And they knew all the lines, which was really great, because I knew the lines too, and it was fun to sing along with them. And so Stewart played Juliet, and Frakes was Romeo, and they so they did the balcony scene, and Stewart was up on top of the captain's deck, and he jumped off into Frakes' arms and kissed him, and he turned to us and said, "It's all right." I'm in touch with my feminine side. So, working the industry, you know, he talked about my 2 teenage boys, and most of them thought I was not doing anything. Well, how's this man, you know, paying our bills? He's an idiot. But I got some cachet when I was Hulk Hogan's manager on Love Boat. That got me some gravy. But then I became a man when I was on Saved by the Bell. A show I loathed doing, which I explained the other day. But my kids went, you know Shrek. As if this somehow mattered. But anyway, it was great fun to do the 1 episode and to be part of the energy of it. So thank you.
It is the gift that keeps on giving. Apparently.
It is. Well,
Keep making money.
still good resids.
Yeah.
I will not be as long-winded as I was the other day.
Why
No,
not?
it's beautiful.
But
Be long-winded, please.
you know, like Clint, I started when I was very, very small and had worked a lot by the time I did Star Trek 3. I got a phone call from my manager, Dorothy Day Otis, and she said, Leonard Nimoy wants to see you. He had seen me in a series that I had done where I had a very sensitive scene with a woman who was playing a gypsy fortune teller trying to help me get over my mom's death, and it was played by an actress named Zora Lampert. She won an Emmy for playing another gypsy in a Kojak episode. She was a very heavy method lady, and I loved her very much, and we had some wonderful moments together. When I went into Leonard's office, he had all kinds of Star Trek ephemera every place. He had encyclopedias, he had star logs, he had Cinefantastique, he had fan mags. Since it was his first directorial outing, and he was helming Trek 3, he immersed himself in that world so that he knew everything about it. So when I went into, it wasn't so much an audition, the first thing he said was, sit down. I felt like I was in a royal palace for a second, you know, this man, beautiful speaking voice. And he had seen me working with Zora in that episode. And his test for me was, how did you like working with her? Because she could be very intimidating to a lot of people. She had this presence when she came onto a set. My stage mom was terrified of her. A lot of people, you know, they took a step back. When we did these scenes, often she would just sit at this little table with her crystal ball and she'd say, I'm going to call you by your character name. And we'd sit there for hours and she'd just stare at me like that. I dug it. She was a hot 44-year-old lady. She could look at me all day long. But I knew where she was going. So my test with Leonard was, he said, how'd you like working with Zora? And I said I loved her. I thought she was wonderful. She even wrote me kind of a love letter afterwards saying how nice it was to work with me. And he said, you passed the test. She's one of my friends. She's a great actress. And what you did with her, I'm going to bring to what I'm going to give you to do. I said, what's that? He said, playing me as a 17-year-old guy. Whoa, man. So as far as being a gig, I was 18 years old. I had worked as a child and teen actor all of my life. I didn't have the responsibilities of a mortgage or payments, you know, at that point. But I recognized it as a very important job. I always took the work seriously. The man was telling me to be respectful of Star Trek, his legacy. He imparted on me to take everything very, very seriously and treat the fans good for the rest of my life, because he said you'll be doing Trek conventions until the day you die. He did, and I said, of course I will. So
Was the impact of Star Trek immediate upon you?
it was. I was a fan of my own things, you know. Matt and I are fans of Escape from New York. I love Kurt Russell. He was a child actor who became a badass. Who wouldn't like that, right? I used to see his picture at Disney when I would go and audition for things, which I never booked. I'd get all the way down to the screen test, but they said you look too Euro and your eyes are too deep set. You're not Disney. But they had his, you know, the casting lady, Virginia Higgins, had Kurt Russell's picture on the wall, and I said, maybe one day I'll be a badass like this guy is. Didn't quite work out that way.
But it did. But immediately you knew what you were in. That's
But
the main point.
yeah, and Indiana Jones 2 was getting ready to come out. Ghostbusters. I mean, '84 was a hell of a year for movies, and the fan stuff was really taking off back then. So yes, I took it very seriously. I understood that Star Trek had its following, and for many, I'll venture out to say, it's like a religion to a lot of people. I know guys for Star Wars who follow the Jedi code of living.
Exactly.
It's a religion in the UK.
Right. So,
Maybe.
yeah. So, I mean, I get it. I got it. One of my best friends is Michael French, and he's standing in the back right now.
What did the Indiana Jones have?
You know, and we
You wear this today.
so I get so long-winded. Yeah, I got it right away. And Leonard Nimoy also took it seriously, and I tried to respect what he was giving me, to honor him.
And the next question.
Jiminy Christmas, for all these
Bueller,
Star
come on.
Trekkers, come
Yeah,
on.
come on, guys. It's got to be something. Anyone? Bueller? Michael?
Yeah, I'd like to find out from all of you on the panel, you've all watched Star Trek evolve as a franchise, even as you've come in and out with various roles and things like that. You've all come in on an on-ramp that was at a different stage, but I'm sure all of you were familiar with Star Trek prior. Mr. Howard, you were at Genesis, so you have the advantage of being in the world in your head as an actor before there was a Star Trek. But I'm curious to find out from all of you what you think of being part of a franchise that's so dynamic and keeps evolving visually, technologically, narratively. I know that's a broad question, but I am curious because you guys are part of a legacy that is not anywhere near the same as it was back in the day, nor any phase in between.
And you've got to come in and out of it at every point, it seems.
Yeah,
Strange New Worlds.
Yeah, I've been fascinated with the people that have attached themselves. Maybe not they have attached themselves, but it's the Akiva Goldsman is a really good example for me of a guy that I really respected. I mean, he wrote Beautiful Mind, and he wrote Cinderella Man, two beautiful movies, and I knew him personally. I don't want to go into why we know each other, but I feel like I have a really good connection to him. And all of a sudden I found out, several years ago, that he was a showrunner, that he had become one of the pivotal minds of the Star Trek universe, because he ran Discovery, and then he's been running Strange New Worlds. And so I've never had a chance to ask Akiva, were you drawn to the franchise, or did the franchise draw to you? I don't know. I find that with Discovery and Strange New Worlds, it's top quality craftsmanship. They spend a boatload of money. When you're on the set of Strange New Worlds, you're literally on the set of a feature. And they take it seriously. The quality is really good. It's still actors in dressing rooms bitching. It's complaining about the craft service, complaining about the catering. I did which one was it? I did Strange New Worlds right in the middle of COVID, and that was absurd. Acting with shields on. When you're rehearsing a scene with an actor and you've got one of those dental face shields on, you're either going to get it or you're not. I mean, this face shield during rehearsal is not going to keep you from getting COVID. But anyway, I don't know. I found it really fascinating. And again, it comes back to, it's a television show, but for whatever reason, and I don't know what the reason is, it has drawn minds together and created entertainment.
I think the reason is because we want a better world, and it's the image that we should be. That's the problem.
Again, that's the framework that was set up with the very first one.
Right.
It showed us who we should be, who we could be. My response is going to be much more disappointing. Because it goes back to These two guys have phenomenal experiences. He's the history of the franchise. You are. You're the history of the franchise. You're the through line. He had a pass the torch moment. We had jobs. Good jobs, you know? Good jobs. But it was this week's job, and I've spoken to a couple of you personally. I'm still stunned to be in a room like this or to be in a room like that, because that was never a projection. That was never a thought. Fortunate enough to do what I love doing to make a living.
Good.
You know, that's the definition of success to me, and the definition of happiness. I'm a theater actor. I know you have a lifetime on stage. So we have, doing that instant response. We're riding the wave of an audience. And sometimes, if we did a decent job, we did what we got paid to do, there are people who want to talk to you afterwards and share the emotions that you shared in the room. In our business, we don't get to do that, ever. I mean, well, I did a picture with Sean Penn. One time, he did one take where I saw the entire crew give a standing O. That's the only time I've seen that in 52 years in the business. You do not get that response. To have someone walk up to a table and ask for an autograph and a picture, and I love you, here's some money. No, that's not a thought. It's not. That impact is stunning to me even still. It was a gig. Did I feel that I'm in this arc of energy and the flow of this stream and the series and all it means to all these people? No, I went to work.
No, I get it.
You know, again, the highlight moment for me was my kid and his best friend coming and getting to sit in Kurt's chair. You know?
Well, as a father myself, and a lot of people in here, that is one of those things that you can't replace.
No. So that's the only thing that took it somewhere else for
I have
me.
things I've worked on that my kids actually said, Dad, that was cool. And inside I'm like, I finally made it. Pat.
I was touring the country in 1975 and 76. I played every national park in the United States except in Maine and Alaska. And it was an original script, and it was great. It was the best job I ever had. And it was before I went to California. And I watched every original Star Trek episode from the original series. It was followed by Shane with David Carradine. And I watched both of those every week in seedy motels in every bloody state in the United States. I was in love with Star Trek. I'm 83 years old, so we're going back a while there. And I felt like all of you in this room, I thought it was a world I wanted to be a part of. A world where color didn't seem to matter to people, where people were friends because they liked each other. That wasn't the world I grew up in. Hey, you're a Mick. Yeah, well, you're a Dago. I mean, that was my world. And that wasn't fun, really, finally, but it was the tribal nature of Philly, where they booed Santa Claus when he came into Franklin Field.
And threw snowballs.
And threw snowballs at him. So that was the world I grew up in. But I just was reminded of a great story. I used to collect comics, and at 83, I'm getting rid of stuff, and read a Swedish book called Death Something, and it's what do you do so other people aren't bored after you're dead. And I've given away 20 bags of clothes, gotten rid of shoes. Now I got to get rid of books.
As one does.
As one does. And so I was at the San Diego Comic-Con long before it became an industry thing. It was just people buying comic books. And that was me. I was collecting tombs of Dracula. What can I tell you? And so I'm standing there looking, and I had done the Star Trek episode on TNG. I had 12 lines in the episode, and they were spread out through the hour. I knew my lines, I'll happy to say. This guy came up next to me, did not face me, but faced this way, so like we're doing. He recited all 12 of my lines. I had totally forgotten this until you guys started talking. And I stood there, you know, thinking, what now? Is there a little bomb button in his show, I'd be nervous. But that was when I realized, God, I did a show that really Christ meant something to him. I mean, he knew 12 lines from an obscure episode.
The most boring man in the universe.
The most boring man in the universe. And so, I think they're just shows. Some shows are industry shows, 30-something, Seinfeld, Star Trek. Then other shows are just popular, Home Improvement, and they're different. When I did Seinfeld, the audience was Woody Allen and Diane Keaton. When I did Home Improvement, it was everybody who ever lived in Iowa.
Don't knock Home Improvement. My fiance is a huge Trek fan. I told him who you were. He looked up, he's like, oh yeah, the guy from Home Improvement.
Right. Listen, don't knock anything. I loved Home Improvement, loved him. Seeing Clint was so great. Ron Howard directed me in Splash, which was the highlight of my early career, and my son was born during the filming of Splash. You know, it's a great life, isn't it? I mean, Jesus, the
A
people
movie that I
you
quote
meet.
all the time.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
So, Stephen, we'll keep this a little shorter.
Gotcha. 20 minutes.
Tell us the con one from yesterday. It was funny.
The which one?
We're still talking. We're still answering Michael's question. Which is, how did you feel coming into something that was, or coming in? How do you feel now about having come into something?
At the time, it was 1983 when I did the meeting with Leonard that got me the job. To backtrack a little bit, I read Leonard Nimoy's book. He wrote two. I wrote one of them. I read one of them where he said Star Trek himself, when he did that, was just a gig for him.
Yeah.
All of the actors, I tell you, we're sitting on this side of the table. You guys pay all of our bills. You're sitting on that side of the table. To be an actor and get anything is a godsend.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn hard now to get work, let me tell you, you know. So any job, you relish it. But when you get into something that's got a following like Star Trek, and Leonard told me at the time, he said, look, for me it was a gig. They wrapped the show, everybody split, nobody really talked to each other anymore. It was only afterwards, when it went into syndication in the 70s, it developed this huge thing and became what it was. He said, it's been good to me. Look, I'm still doing it. When you get into something like this, I said something the other day. Don't want it to sound too heavy, but as recently as a couple of 100 years ago, a lot of people couldn't read, so they went to church and they listened to a vicar or a pastor or a preacher
Or a temple.
or a temple.
The same.
Right? Same thing. We'll throw a mosque in there too, okay? And biblical heroes were their idols, Look at paintings from fine art and sculpture and everything like that. A lot of it is biblical and ancient heroes. But now, the time of period that we're living in, it's Star Trek, it's Star Wars, it's DC, it's Marvel, it's all that stuff. You have to respect that.
Let's be clear, it's pre-Disney Star Wars. But anyway.
Right, exactly.
But we're not snobs.
And it's fortunate that people remember me 40 years later, pon-farring with Robin Curtis. I was in Birmingham, England 4 years ago. They had invited me over to a Star Trek event. They treated us first class over there, which was really nice. And I took Robin aside and I looked at her. And I said, I got to tell you something. I got her to calm down for a second and look at me in the eye. And I said, would you have thought at the time, 36 years ago, when I saw you in the makeup chair like this while they were gluing your ears on, and you had a closed cigarette and a cup of coffee while you were dozing and they were gluing your stuff on, that we would be here in Birmingham and there's hundreds of people that want to see both of us, And she actually started crying. And she said, no. I said, thank you for being my leading lady for 36 years, And there's people that still want to see us pon-farr. So it's very important. And she says, I'm doing something pornographic. These are important. It's important to people. It really is. And as an actor, know, Clayton and I were talking the other day, when it touches somebody, we did our job, man.
Yeah.
You guys are still here,
So,
and you want to talk to us.
I have a question for all of you. So, and when you did the first episode you did, this is probably the reason I'm asking. But
How old were you?
You were
7.
Yeah. How old were you when you did Hindenburg?
9.
9. You know, you told you were 6 and something else. That's right. I was just I couldn't remember her age. Anyway, when you did Star Trek, the first one, you weren't even with the other. When you were talking about it, you were just sitting there with no one around you, right? With the crew, but not. You were just on a screen, so you didn't have any of the actors there to feed off of.
Well, the scene that I did.
Oh, you had one where you walked with him. That's right.
With Captain Kirk,
Yeah,
and to be absolutely honest, I have no memory. I have no pure memory of working that day. Well, the only memory I have is they brought me to the set early, and they were filming something. The crew was filming something on the other side of the soundstage. And I don't know if they still do this today, but they used to do it where on a soundstage, the sound man would push a button and a bell would go, and then when they wrapped, when they cut, just to make sure everybody wasn't making noise, they went,
Yeah, still does it.
and I heard that those 2 bells, they brought me to my set, the little Baylock set, the Facerius set. And then I heard the 2 bells and I saw the crew coming towards me. And it was just a very powerful thing. I remember it. There are things I remember about working on the show, how uncomfortable the wardrobe was and how uncomfortable the head thing was, because they put a skull cap on me and then they put this little crown on top of me, and they must have measured the crown to my head without the skull cap. They add the skull cap, and you know, wardrobe people are wonderful artists, but they're not brain surgeons.
Right.
But you know, my memories, I don't honest to God.
Right. Well, where I was going, I kind of stopped when you said that, but it is, as you've gone through and the whole thing, now I know, because I've been on a lot of recent sets, that when you're acting, you're lucky as an actor that everything's pretty much there. I mean, nowadays, I know there's green screens and things, but my point is, it's whatever physically can be there, usually it's worked out to where there's screens going and things like that. I was just wondering your impression over the years of how has that changed at all as far as your ability to, I mean, it's all imagination. I know.
Folks, I have been in on the magic trick for longer than I can remember.
Literally.
And so I know it's just, it's make-believe. We're inventing stuff. It's creative. It starts with somebody in a room with a typewriter. I mean, it used to be a typewriter and carbon paper. And now it of course, it's all evolved, but it still starts with the creative. Let's build it, let's invent it, let's build it, let's manufacture it, and let's deliver it. Let us not forget, a huge part of this business is just old-fashioned salesmanship.
Yep.
Yes.
You can make a product, but if you don't sell it, and if you don't get the public to watch, or if the public has a bad attitude about your product when they're watching it, it ain't gonna fly. So, you know, and also one sad thing about modern creative entertainment is it gets reverse engineered. They literally build the sales campaign before they make the movie.
Yeah.
They will invent a poster and then tell the very, very smart creative people, the writers, the Lowell Gans and Bob Lou Mandels of the world, they will tell them, write a script based on this poster. It literally happened to Lowell Gans and Bob Lou Mandel, who are longtime friends. You know, they wrote Splash, they wrote Parenthood, they wrote some seminal comedies of all time. And yet, on one project, I believe it was the Pink Panther, one of the Pink Panther movies, they literally told them, the studio president told them, here, write the script based on this, and they had already built a poster for it.
There was a whole portion of the industry in the late 80s, early 90s that was done like that. I've done pictures from A to Z, Assault to Kill the Bimbos to Zombie Strippers. And both of those films were posters. Somebody said, Assault to Kill the Bimbos, there's the title, okay? We're going to make that movie, now go write it.
Who remembers Cannon Films? That was their shtick.
Yeah, but that was the deal.
And Roger Corman, too.
Yeah. But what people don't understand, you touched on something. What you don't understand, or perhaps don't know, is that the toughest part of what we do is getting the job.
Yeah.
Because if we've had hundreds of jobs, we've had thousands of auditions. And every single one of those, as you said, we have to create. And now, if you're doing it at home in your basement with your camera, because it's a taped audition that you send off, in your basement, you have to create that world. The good news is, when you get the gig, and you're on the set, and the world has been created for you, you walk into the world with human beings dressed as those other human beings, the makeup, all that's been done, it's a living, breathing moment. But to get the job, you have to do all that right here, because none of it's in front of you.
Right.
There was a comic in Starlog magazine years ago that always stuck with me. It was a vampire standing in front of the movie poster, and it said, whatever, Dracula something, whatever, and at the bottom it said, based on the Johnson County obituary. That just always stuck with me. It's just, that's what the film business is right there. Anyway, so, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, getting the job just is very scary. I started in the business at the age 3.
Wow, what did you do? I have to know, what was your first job?
I got drinks from my father.
That's one there we go.
I always wanted to get famous enough to get on Carson or Kimball and then say, how did you get started as an actor? And everybody said, Richard Burton, Richard Harris. I was going to say, no, my father needed a drink. And so he taught me Danny Boy, the Rosentralee, and then he carried me into bars. I was 3 years old. He put me on the bar, and all these Irishmen shellacked the bar. And he looks at me, he orders a shot and a beer, 40 cents, Corby's in a draft. And he said, all right, boy, sing. Oh, the pale moon was rising above. The guy said, give that man a drink. Oh, he's too young, give his old man a drink. So my old man got 5 shots, 5 beers, and we went to the next bar. And that's how I got into show business. Ever since, eventually I fell in love with it. And eventually I drank. To say I drank.
Well, as they say, that's one way to go.
Well, it's like the line in Merrily We Roll Along. What do? I drink. No, what do you really do? I really drink. And today I'm 51 years sober. So I fortunately got to Hollywood without the drinking, or I'd never worked. And I was 2 years sober when I got to LA, and that was scary because I thought, Christ, do I not want to drink? And then I met my wife, Beatrice Colin, who was on Happy Days. And we got married a year later, and she was at Ron's wedding to Cheryl. And, you know, a whole world. There's only 400 of us in the business, and we change hats and noses.
It is weird that in the business, up until about, I'd say 15 years ago, you saw the same people pretty much doing everything as far as, you know, like, I'd see you in everything, you know, like a little bit of babies here and there and so forth, and there was a lot of that going on. I'd see you in a lot of stuff, that, you know, just, you'd have the big role, the little role, big role, the little role. And then suddenly, about 15 years ago, and maybe it's just because I'm getting old, and I don't know who those people were, which is probably what it is, but I know, you don't see the same people doing everything anymore. It's much more, I think the industry was a little more closed off, and now it's become much more, the internet has certainly had a big hand in that.
Yes.
So, you know, I regret that the internet pisses me off, because I had to learn to make movies with film and cutting, and now you can go to YouTube and go, what do you mean? Oh, get your phone and do this, screw yourself. Anyway, any more questions?
Yes.
Who are you first, and I'll come to you.
All of you on Star Trek wore prosthetics to some degree.
Yes.
Some more than others. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about your experience with that.
Oh, cool.
Well, we start on that end and go this way.
All right.
But keep it somewhere, we're running out of time.
Tell me your story. That was a
2
great
minutes.
story.
They sent me over to Tom Berman's studio, and they took molds of my ears. They had head castings all over the place. They were up to their ears in nose and clay and foam, you know, to get all these things done. The makeup guys who worked on Star Trek 3, one was James Cale, he did Robin's ears. The other fellow who was doing mine for a couple of days was Wes Dawn. His family goes back for years, you know, the Wizard of Oz and all kinds of stuff, you know, doing makeup. He was also an actor. as well. So I'm in the Gumball Rally as one of the drivers. And then they sent me over to a fellow, because when the Klingons came in, they needed more makeup. Michael Caine's personal makeup man did my makeup for a couple of days on that. Not necessarily uncomfortable. It took a long time back then. It takes long now, but the glues and stuff were different back then. So 3 hours for Robin and I to get our ears on and our face done.
Did they do your eyebrows? Did you have to have your eyebrows done?
Shaved them, and then they drew them to go up. I also had to wear brown contact lenses because Leonard said, your eyes are too blue, they gotta look like mine. So they took me to a man named Dr. Greenspoon, who was famous for making lenses for all kinds
He was the only guy in Hollywood for 50 years.
Right.
The only one.
I was the first guy to get soft contact lenses. They usually were very breakable. But
There you go.
they were on the tips.
Pat, what was your...
I had those forehead things. They don't look very impressive, but it took several hours. And my memory was my salary for the week was $7,500, and I ended up making $18,000 because we were on golden time. Because I come in at 7 a.m.
Does everybody know what golden time means?
It doesn't exist anymore.
It's called super double golden overtime. After you get to a certain hour in film, everything gets exponentially more expensive.
And you have to have
Paid us
8
to-
hours between your wrap and your start. So we would wrap at 2 a.m. and have me back at 9. That's a lot of money.
They pay you a lot for that. That's what's going on with all these union contracts. We're having all these strikes. That's why that is, because of all the
So
money.
anyway, instead of 7,500, I made 18,000. So it was that. And I had Bud Westmoreland do my makeup, and that was pretty exciting, because he had a big factory there where he made stuff for your face. It was great. I loved it. Just great.
It was an easy one for me. I had to do life masks for some, and then from the life mask they build a bust, and then from the bust they do a rubber mask that you're going to add the makeup pieces on and then put on you. It took me about half that amount of time, but I felt honored because they gave me the pieces to take home, which I have on a bust from the block.
Did you warn for the Star Trek?
Oh yeah. Well, if you count,
I mean, you can't ball cap.
if you count a bald cap as a hair producer, they asked my dad if they could ask me if I'd be willing to shave my head. And as a 7-year-old, there was a simple no is a complete sentence. And then on Enterprise, when I played a Ferengi, they didn't. It was a television show. I was only going to be in makeup for 4 or 5 days tops. They didn't make me a piece. They literally took Armin's. Armin had the biggest head. I've got a huge cranium, and Armin's got a big head. And they just literally took his piece, put it on my head, and go, phew, that fit. And it was only probably about 2 hours in the makeup chair, and because there were things they didn't have to do, but yeah, forced calls. If they, at least at the time when I did Enterprise, you had to have 12 hours off,
Right.
And of course on television, and if they're pushing to get the days done, no, they'll just pay the money. And I don't know what it was. It was about $900 was that penalty, and they would. And so back in those days on the set of Enterprise, it was that, oh, we're going to buy you a couch. You know, right? Because $900 is about the cost of a decent sized couch. So yeah, okay, Clint, you want a new couch. So anyway, and I've had plenty of experience with prosthetics, but mine were not. Wasn't that interesting on Star Trek.
When the film business blew up here, and I was, I'll do my thought. When the film business blew up here, my first union gig, I'm standing on set, and somebody said, "Here, we're gonna go laundry." I said, "We get a 12-hour turnaround, right?" And I'm not an actor, I'm a crew. He laughed at me, and he goes, "No, the actors get that. You get 6." I'm like, "Thank you." Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, once upon a time we had golden time. We don't have that anymore. We've lost that in contract disputes. But golden time was, you were paid for an 8-hour day. 8 to 10 was time and a half. 10 to 12 was double.
Yes.
And golden time was triple time after 12. My favorite day in the business, I hit golden time on the blob and never got in front of the lens. So I read a book, finished the book, and went home.
So you have a question?
Yes.
Yesterday, Clayton and I were talking about
Roddenberry was a visionary, still ahead of his time.
Yes, yes.
With the world he created. Stephen, when you said again about how Nimoy was doing a passing of the baton and taking this seriously, which of the following children's series from Star Trek do you think has accepted that baton and really put out, maybe even enhanced the vision Roddenberry's done?
Well, Strange New Worlds, they did a musical.
Yes,
and I think Roddenberry and the original inventors and executioners, and that's a wrong word, of the Star Trek show, the original show. They did Trouble with Tribbles, for Christ's sake. You know, they did some wacky stuff. And to make a decision in this day and age that they're going to do an episode of a science fiction show that people revere and that they're going to make a musical out of it, I think that's the spirit. You know, I don't know. I think that's the spirit. The one note I'll make about Discovery, and I hate to editorialize about my experiences or editorialize about the programming, but on Discovery, my goodness, they took themselves really seriously. And listen, when you're doing a television show, it's a job, and yeah, you want to do it good and you want to concentrate, but it's just a freaking television show. And these people on Discovery, they get very serious. And they also talk really low. They talk, everybody, a lot of times they talk really
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Oh, wait, I have one thought.
Yeah.
You had mentioned something that was really, I think, that people want, what would you say, a better life?
Yeah.
I think one thing that attracts people to the Star Trek world is Star Trek always kind of wants a better life. Everything's a goal. Right. You know another show that represents that, and it's stuck? The Andy Griffith Show.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
I've been several times down to Mount Airy, North Carolina, where they have this pilgrimage. People come and they celebrate the Andy Griffith Show with Mayberry Day. Yeah. And looking in the eyes of these fans, and I've even had them articulate to me what it is. The Andy Griffith Show represented a simpler life. So, and I think a better life. So I think, show anything that is proposing better, I think is, without hammering.
I'm gonna disagree this much.
Oh, okay.
This much, because yes to what you just said, but more of a yes to what you're leading to. That better life is behind us. Roddenberry's better life is in front of us.
Yes. Oh, sure. Where we're living now is not. That's why I think a lot of people escape to television.
Yeah.
They escape to the Andy Griffith Show because they just, for a half an hour, they want to watch Andy and Barney, and it's a simpler life.
Even being 10 to 15 years old, I watch it and think, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I still, like I've been out on location, what am I watching? I'm watching the Andy Griffith Show because of the simple pleasure. But Roddenberry gave us something to aspire to, and we're still trying to get there.
What time is it?
Very good. 2 more minutes.
I was just gonna say that was the conversation of Roddenberry spoke, civil rights movement, Cold War, diversity, all of that, and we're not there. And that's kind of where my question was. Any of the others picked up the mantle to actually try to go, what can we aspire to?
Don't get me started.
Anyway.
Different conversation.
That woman had a question.
Yeah.
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to share with you that the reason many have been helping with conventions since 1984 and now attending. One of the other reasons that we all do this is because every year I do something, not only do I love your stories and love hearing about what it has meant to you, but it brings out a memory of something wonderful that I experienced in my early life, and I cherish that, and I thank you for doing what you do and getting paid to do it, because you're still giving gifts to us.
God bless you. Yes.
You need to understand that your presence here is giving us a gift.
Yes.
You're giving us a sense of community that we don't have when we're standing in front of the camera. So thank you.
Glad to hear that.
Yes, exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like being in an improv, really, in a lot of ways. No, I mean, like the guy who knew all my lines, when I thought,
Right.
what is that? But, you know, people come up to me in this 2 days I've been here, and I've only done 3 conventions. And, you know, talking to people about what shows have meant to them, you know, whether it's Seinfeld or All in the Family or you know, they all meant a lot to me. Yes, they were money, but I was a kid from Philly, you know, whose parents came here from Ireland, couldn't read or write, and I'm out there in LA and I'm doing shit, you know, and all of a sudden I'm talking to people who love this show or that show, and it makes it all come back for me too. I mean, I'd like to make a few bucks, but I'm here because this keeps me, I'm 83 and sober 52 years. This keeps me alive and excited because you're alive and excited, and these guys are wonderful. I've learned more from these guys in the last 2 days. I should be paying. Thank you.
If I could
Thank you all.
back on something that earlier about, you know, for every job that we do, there's thousands of auditions that just kind of vanish into the ether, you know? So you put your all into it as an actor. Sometimes they stick. They never get back to you if it doesn't stick. So something like this, we've done our job. It validates us as actors. We thank you guys very, very much because that means we did what we were supposed to do.
And that's how you close it. Big hands for our
Thank you all.